So it's funny. So my son and I were in BC we went to Whistler, went skiing, we went to Vancouver after we went to the Canucks game. And so at the end of every big vacation, I kind of take a breakdown of costs of how much we spent, right? So I was saying to my wife, here's how much we spent on airfare, here's how much we spent on hotel, cars, here's how much we spent on alcohol. She said, well, what? She goes, I know you guys drink, why so much? And I said, well, if you look at these 4 transactions here, those are the 4 times we bought beer when we were at the Canucks game, right? $100 worth of beer for like 8 beers.
Oh my God.
So she's like, oh yeah. So, and that was just drinking there wasn't even buying craft. The craft was $3 more per can than the regular stuff. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to All Beer Inside. Today we're in Kanata, just outside of Ottawa, Ontario. And joining us today is Chris from Evergreen Craft Ales.
How's it going, man?
Good, yourself. Thank you very much for taking time out of your clearly busy schedule to speak with us about your beer, your passion, the brewery itself, and everything that's involved in your life when it comes to craft beer.
Absolutely.
Awesome. You brought me out some tasty looking beers here to try today. What's number 1 here?
So that's one of our most popular beers, our Clothing of Gods Northeastern IPA. It's a nice mix of Citra Mosaic on there. It gives you just tons of hop aroma and flavor from it.
Okay.
Personally, one of my favorites, although I tend to go toward lower alcohol beers a little bit, but it's this is the one that, when it fills the need for anybody who needs a good dose of hoppiness without a lot of bitterness to it.
Beautiful nose. As you do on the show.
Cheers.
A toast. Ooh, that is delightful. It's dancing on my palate. Wow, that is a very tasty beer. Thank you once again. Fantastic beer to start. And what's the beer story? Where did Evergreen start to where it is now?
Yeah.
What got you into craft beer? Everything.
So I can think of a couple of pivotal moments in my brewing history, so to speak. The first thing that got me into craft beer was actually going to a soccer tournament in Vermont for my son. And not really understanding, this is going back probably about 8 or 9 years ago, I guess, and taking a trip down to the Alchemist and their brew pub, not the pub in Waterbury, but their first production facility in Waterbury, and standing in line there and seeing all these people lining up and not really understanding what they were all lining up for. And I remember there was these 4 guys who were standing in front of me, and they had their trucks all packed with canoes and everything, and they're walking in there and they're buying Heady Topper. And I'm like, oh, Heady Topper, I've heard about this, that's why we're here. And so they're walking out with 2 2.4s each. This is $144 US a piece.
Yeah.
I'm like, where are you guys going? Oh, we're going out in the backcountry for 2 weeks and we're going canoeing. So okay, so I walk in and I bought 2 4-packs and thinking, okay, I'm pretty special buying a decent amount of beer. And the first sip of that beer, because it was so fresh and it was such a new style beer to me, it totally changed my perspective on what beer should be. So that's my kind of foray into craft at that. And then getting to where Evergreen started. So I was involved with the startup of another brewery in Ottawa, but didn't kind of follow through on that. And then decided that what I wanted to do was I wanted to open something really small. And in retrospect, it would have been the wrong thing to do, because small doesn't translate well into beer, at least not, you need a certain level of scale. And after trying a few different things, I said, you know what, I found a way to open a brewery in the garage. And the city of Ottawa has a home-based business bylaw that as long as you can meet these 12 criteria, there's really nothing wrong with starting it like that. And so I applied for my licenses and I got it all went through. And then I started with the one barrel system in my garage for almost 2.5 years. And that was a good learning experience, because I got exposure to I got the ability to interact with other brewers at the ownership levels as well. So I got access to the industry through that. Got a lot of chances to try a lot of things, make a lot of mistakes, and try lots of different beers. But at the end of the day, it got me it generated enough interest for people to want to actually invest in opening a larger facility. And then here we are. We've been open here in this location for almost 2.5 years now. Over 2 years under COVID. So we opened in September 2019, and I can still remember March 16th, 2020, when we had a private group in here, and the girl who was hosting the party for her husband there, she came up and gave me a big hug after, saying thanks for such a great party and all that. And I kind of froze, and I thought, this COVID thing, I wonder what this is all about. and then we all know the rest of the story from there on.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a 2 years. I know the first time I visited you was summer 2020, so like when stuff was low again and we were still like learning, and obviously had to scan my way in to present my ID, which I personally, I'm not a conspiracy theorist when it comes like the government's out to get me. I'm like, no, I'm just going to listen to what they're saying because I don't want to catch a deadly disease that's going to shred my lungs.
Yeah, yeah. a little bit of common sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's so that's the unfortunate part, but it is good that you have survived, and clearly a lot of craft breweries in Canada I've seen have survived and actually thrived during the pandemic, which is wild.
Yeah, it depends on your business model, I guess. I mean, for us, we never really got a chance to kind of hit the ground running and kind of get the festival route going and all the kind of stuff, the normal things you do with operating a brewery. When we opened here, our initial goal was really to do most of our business out of our tap room. Fill this place as much as possible, as much draft, as much retail as we could straight out of here, because that's where the best margin is. But it required us to make a number of changes, and selling online was one, home delivery was one, LCBO was one, beer store was one, grocery stores was one, and that got us through all those periods. And now what we're looking at right now is a time to kind of reset and kind of really rethink what we're going to do under normal conditions. Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, who knows when actual normal conditions. We're still under a state of emergency across Canada.
Yeah.
Now
we're still seeing some hesitancy, I think, in people coming out here and there. It depends on whereabouts you are. We see our tap room levels fluctuate from, on the weekends where it's full and busy to other times where there's nobody. And it's hard to gauge these days where the direction, where people are feeling the most comfortable. And I think that in certain parts of the country, like I was in BC about a month ago, I was at a Canucks game and it was 18,000 people with no mask and there was nobody caring about anything.
Yeah.
But in Ottawa, it's a little bit more conservative. I think you walk into a grocery store and you see most people still wearing masks. So it's going to take some time for people to kind of figure out what their comfort level is, I think.
Yeah. Before our fifth wave in Canada, I was actually down in Plattsburgh for the first time, and it's like seeing people walk around without masks, and I'm like,
yeah.
I'm not used to it. I'm personally still not comfortable, so I'm going to wear a mask for me.
Yeah.
And it's not fun, but I wear it anyways. It's just what, in my opinion, like maybe we should have been doing that all along. Is when you're sick, just cover your mouth.
Well, yeah, and that's the funny thing is that for the first year of the pandemic, I didn't get sick at all.
Yeah.
With anything.
Yeah.
Not even a cold. So that was nice.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, as somebody who was lucky enough to still be able to work from home, I can't really complain. It's, hey, bring your laptop home just in case. Yeah, you're staying home until further notice. And now it's, oh, by the way, you're staying home until we need you in the office. No problem.
Yeah.
Coffee takes me 1 minute now. Going to the bathroom takes me 1 minute. It's not a complaint. And then I have the convenience of, unfortunately in Quebec, we didn't have a delivery service when it came from the breweries itself.
Right.
We did have beer stores, or our version of beer stores, being able to deliver, which was great. And which is something that I'm very jealous of the rest of Canada was beer delivery. As a Quebecer, it's like, oh.
It's funny the way the different laws play out across the country.
Yeah.
And even in Ontario, like they've made a bunch of different changes, like allowing restaurants to deliver, but then there was, we couldn't deliver for other breweries. Like, for us, like when home delivery first started, like it was insane. Like, and we were totally like, we didn't have a driver, we didn't even have a delivery van at that point. And so in the first few months of the pandemic, it was nonstop. Like people were, drinking tons of beer and getting home deliveries and stuff. And then the landscape has kind of changed a little bit now, where it's kind of settled out a little bit. But restaurants are now allowed to sell take-home beer, which I don't know. I'm not super on board on that personally, but it gets more beer out the door anyway, I guess.
Do you see delivery sticking around?
We're going to keep doing it for sure. I mean, we're out doing LCBO grocery licensee deliveries anyway. So at that point, but the thing that we are finding is that the volume of home deliveries is not. When you're doing 50 or 60 deliveries a day, the free delivery model works because like you have that volume of traffic going. If we only have 2 or 3 deliveries on a day, and it gets a little bit trickier to make the economics work on it, I think. So we're looking at different ways to do it, but we'll keep it around. But we're also finding that people are now coming out more and doing more. So it's not, the demand it's just not as necessary anymore.
Clearly you have the patio in the back, and that's coming back around probably in the next month too. So
if it goes above 15 degrees today, we'll be open out there for sure. It's it's that patio was a lifesaver for us. Like the developer who developed the property, we were allowed to have a patio, but we had to put the thing together in under a week after they've lifted the first lot. I don't know, one of those anymore. And they're like, okay, well, outdoor eating is fine. We're like, all right. So we had a patio put up in under a week, and it was a miracle that we actually got it done. But that saved our butt that first summer for sure.
That's good.
It was a huge thing.
Yeah, and I know like you have the pretty big doors up front here too, that if you even had to have it open, it's fine. So. Yeah,
that's been good. The patio's been nice, and people like patios anyway. So we would have put one out there eventually anyway, but it just accelerated it. I mean, that's what the pandemic has done for us, is that it's made us more agile. It's made us look at different avenues and different ways of doing things that perhaps if things had just gone normally, perhaps we wouldn't have done them. Right? Yeah. So now we've got that experience in a number of different avenues that we can exploit in different ways.
I mean, I do feel as Canadians, like, because we have such a limited time frame where we can be on a patio, or in Quebec, as we call them, terraces, it's, I'd rather be out there. Even if it's raining, I don't care. Just put me in an umbrella. I want to have my beer outside. So I feel, especially being a Canadian, where we're winter 6.5 to 9 months a year, depending on the year.
That's not true. Come on. That's just perpetuating the American stereotype of us, right? We have summer for longer than that. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Things are shifting. So,
just remember, 10 degrees is still warm for us.
That's
right?
true.
So.
That's true. Yeah. And I'm so happy that, like, again, a lot of craft breweries survived. There's very few I know of. I think there's maybe 2 in Ontario that I'm aware of that failed. There's 2 or 3 in Quebec, but 20 have opened.
There's been a couple of big casualties out of all this, and I don't think that it's rosy for everybody. I think certain breweries have thrived, certain have had. I mean, we've survived through this. We haven't thrived through this for sure. It's just kind of, some of it's luck of the draw, some of it's buzz, some of it's whatever. But I think that the good thing is that everybody who is still here is stronger because of it.
You're kind of like in the strip mall thing. Do you find there's a draw of somebody's like at the eye care specialist, and then, I'm going to go have a beer after I got my new pair of glasses or whatever?
This location has been kind of strange. Like, we really thought that Costco and Home Depot would really drive a lot of traffic, but we're finding that people who are going to those places are very kind of, they're very focused on the task at hand. Like Costco, if you've ever shopped at Costco, it's you have to be prepared, right? Like you go in there, you do your thing, and by the time you get out, you're like, okay, I don't know if I want to go.
It's draining.
Yeah, it's exhausting. But we do have a good mix of retailers in around here. We term this as where we are as kind of a mix of very healthy places, and then there's like Sin City. If we've got the Herb and Weed shop over there, we've got Oakham Distillers next door to us, and we've got us here, and we're like, well, all we need is like. There's a number of different vices you can put into different empty slots around here that I won't say on camera.
At a casino.
Just to balance off all the healthiness around here like that.
That's great. Finding this location, was there any kind of roadblocks or problems just from even creating the Evergreen Craft brand to where you are now? Like, problem location. Now, obviously, from what I've heard from yourself and Paul with Conspiracy, is the Ontario government's very open to split your house, and your garage is your business and your house is your house. So that sounds very welcoming, but I'm sure there's other problems that you've run into in the meantime.
The one thing that I find about Ottawa in general is there's a distinct lack of commercial, like good, cheap commercial space that you can get for starting a brewery. So, we spent almost a year looking for locations before we ended up here. My partner has actually bought the unit that we're in. So, that helps a lot. But we couldn't find anything that, if we were going to be paying the commercial rent price that we're going to be paying, and say down in Hittenberg or somewhere like that, it was the rent is expensive. Whereas we were out in Vancouver last month, and there's whole districts of these kind of just derelict warehouse spaces that allow these organic brewery districts to form. Right. In Ottawa, the commercial real estate is pricey. For the most part, in a brewery, there's a lot of space eaten up by stuff doing nothing. So all those fermenters that you see there, there's only action on them. They're like a baseball game, right? There's like 7 minutes of action in a baseball game, but 3.5 hours of time standing around. That's what fermenters are like, because you're filling them or emptying them or cleaning them. The other 12 to 14 days, they're just sitting there taking up space. And so it's kind of expensive real estate for that kind of activity. But at the same time, for us, we decided to make the place wide open, so at least we're where people can see what's going on, and there's a visual aspect to it. So I guess that's another trade-off. But that's the one thing I found about location-wise when we were looking around, trying to find somewhere that was large enough and reasonably priced was difficult.
And then getting licenses, just moving in general, I guess, the doors are pretty big. Previous interview, Pub Brewski, like they had a door the size of this table that they have moving these tanks in. It's pretty crazy.
So everything that is in here came through these doors.
Okay.
So those are 30 barrel fermenters. We had them manufactured to 1,760 millimeters in diameter. Okay. So the diameter on these doors here, when you take the doors off the hinges, is 1,762 millimeters wide.
Wow.
Okay. So we have pictures where you could literally, like we're talking like that on both sides of the tank. And I remember when the guys came in we had a rigging company bring in, they're like, Chris, I don't think we're getting this stuff in here like that. And I'm like, oh, we have to get it in. And sure enough, it did fit through, but it was a very, very stressful moment.
I'm sure your heart rate on your Apple Watch at the time was through the roof.
Well, you can look at the doors and you see you're not pulling the walls apart, right? And so we had to trust the manufacturer actually built them, and they did. They built them exactly the spec, which is perfect.
That's great. So what's beer number 2 I'm trying here?
Beer number 2 is our Maiden Voyage Pale Ale. So Pale Ale, I understand, is not the sexiest style that people look at. It is my favorite style. This is my favorite beer that we do. I am expecting that Pale Ale will come back into style within the next, sometime. And so I'm sticking to my guns on that because this is my favorite beer. And it's called Maiden Voyage because what I used to do when I was home brewing, so I used to have multiple different home brew systems as I kind of progressed on. So my Maiden Voyage batch was always the first beer we did on the system. You usually need a little bit of time to kind of dial in and understand what you're doing on every new system. And on my first time in the garage brewery, Maiden Voyage was that beer.
Okay.
And that was, it became a beer that actually stuck. Whereas we didn't actually do Maiden Voyage on our first time on this system because we actually had the recipe already developed and it was already ready to go.
Awesome. As we do.
Yep.
A toast.
Cheers.
Yeah, there's no bitter punch.
No, we try to make it nice and balanced. That recipe's been iterated over probably 13 or 14 different times. It is my favorite beer that we do anyway.
Yeah, so you mentioned that was the first homebrew beer, more or less. The Maiden Voyage was that. What was the first beer that ever came out of Evergreen Craft?
We did our stout first.
Okay.
A dry Irish stout was the first one we did, and the reason was because you can hide a lot more in a stout than you can in other beers. So for the first time on our system, as we did our first big batch on there, that's what we did. Purely for practical reasons versus anything else.
Yeah. The name Evergreen Craft, where does that come from?
So Evergreen Drive is where the street that I live on, where the garage brewery was first started. It's called Evergreen Craft Ales. I know that it's kind of a limiting name in a sense, but Dogfish Head is called Dogfish Head Craft Ales, and so they are actually kind of my favorite brewery, so to speak, from back when I was, what influenced me the most. And evergreen.com was taken, so we couldn't find that. So Evergreen Drive, so you can see the street sign over there. That's the street sign from my street, and that's where we started. And the logo is patterned after the City of Nepean street sign as well.
Very cool. Yeah, nice and simple. You didn't have to complicate it in any way. So it's pretty...
and my only regret is that I didn't figure out a way to make the logo more square.
Yeah.
It's a rectangular logo. It's a little challenging putting it in different places, but the story is there, and it's about a street. It's the same way as you'd have a mill street or something like that, where it's transferable enough, but it's not totally locked into one style like that.
Yeah. I mean, the world of craft beer, the art and the science it combines with the creativity is just, it's wild. That, you mentioned Dogfish Head. What's a Dogfish Head?
Yeah. It's actually a point. It's not even it's a point where the dogfishes are running, I guess.
And then, my videographer, Phil, he's heading out to Boston. He's like, yeah, Trillium. I'm like, I know Trillium as the Ontario Public Health Plan, not the brewery.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's just coming up with brewery names is so wild.
It's funny because, you think you have a name, even picking beer names, you think you have one, and you always do a quick Google on what it is before you name it, and then it's like, oh, man. And sometimes you're just like, well, they're too far away to matter. It's not a big release beer, but other times it's like, well, you just can't use that name.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's unfortunately happened with a previous interview. Is he was named this, and then he got a cease and desist, and so he had to.
That's almost a badge of honor, getting a cease and desist in some way, though, right? You kind of almost want. You never see the guys who get the cease and desist. You never see anything bad happen to them. They just change it. They get a bunch of press and they move on, right? It's fine.
When it comes to naming the beer, is that kind of a team effort, you and your partner and a couple of the staff as well, or?
More often than not, it's mostly me. Yeah, I think probably 85% of our beers are named by me, for better, for worse sometimes. So, the Copper Lager that we just released was a late night, have to get a label done kind of thing. It's a one-off beer that we did, and it's easily the worst label that I've ever done of all the labels that we do. Most of the ones that have elaborate art, we do have an artist. He's actually in Lithuania, believe it or not. I stumbled across him a long time ago, and he just does great work for us. So the ones that we have in regular rotation, we do get proper labels done up all the time. But if it's just a one-off, sometimes we'll just slap something together because we know it'll be gone in a couple weeks anyway. So
it's a good mix. It's like quite the dichotomy of kind of like the straight up labels and then the beautiful art label, and it looks like some are stickers and some are wraps, so you have quite the mix of like the can styles that you do.
Yeah, the wraps are more because it makes life a little bit easier for us, but you also have to leverage the scale of buying enough of those labels to make it worthwhile. So we do have a mix of that just because of that.
Oh, it's pretty cool. And you decided from the start, and now I know from probably in your when you were home commercial brewing, I guess. It's a weird combination.
Yeah.
Was that also cans at first, or were you bottling? Were you doing growlers?
In the garage, we were doing cans as well. I had a little single head Dixie can seamer and a little fill and purge off the taps, and it generally worked pretty well. I'd just sit there and have a little TV in there and watch a hockey game and just can away 200 cans, and away we went. So yeah, I've always liked cans as a format. I know people ask, oh, why do you guys carry growlers? It's because growlers are a pain in the butt. Number one, you get too much beer to drink out of them. Whereas too much beer you should drink out of them. And we can always, some of us can finish off a 64-ounce growler no problem. But at the same time, it ups the upfront cost on it because you have to deposit and then you got to clean them. I've heard nightmare stories about people with growlers and what comes back in them, and I want no part of that.
So I know, you can rinse out a return growler here in Quebec. It cannot go back. It has to go to a special company.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's very, as somebody, who interviewed breweries all over Quebec who do growlers, and they're like, it is the most pain in the butt part.
Right.
Is we cannot just rinse it out, put sanitizer in it, and then do it. It's a full rigmarole for no reason.
Yeah, and it's a trade-off, right? Because the cost of a canning line is not cheap.
No.
Right? And so that's always a balance starting out, is having the capital to be able to do those kind of things.
Yeah. You take what you could get, obviously. Now, when you're starting up and if growlers are selling well, just do growlers until people ask otherwise. Now, doing cans, I'm a huge fan of cans. It is, they're lighter to bring around. I can bring this on the beach. I don't have to worry about some kid stepping on it and ripping his foot open.
Yeah.
It's the conveniences of cans over bottles. Now, when it comes to like specialty things like Nickelbrook's yearly Bastard series, that's one thing, but how many years was Flying Monkeys doing Chocolate Manifesto in bottles? Now it's in cans, and I've tried both.
It is in cans, eh?
Yeah.
It's just easier.
Yeah.
Once you have a canning line, like we released our bourbon barrel aged stout. Well, actually, we haven't released it yet because we haven't got the labels yet. But we were debating. It's like, well, we can put it in cans, or we can put all the effort into hand bottling stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, I don't want to hand bottle everything for a whole day like that. Like, you get a crooked wrist with a beer gun, forget that.
Yeah.
So, but the other side of it too is that as soon as you put beer in a bottle, it's immediately more expensive. The consumer will generally pay more, but that's for us. We have a canning line, so we just use it for that. So.
Awesome. So what's beer number 3 I'm trying here?
Beer number 3 is our Copper Lager that we just talked about with the really bad label. So we had a bit of downtime. We don't generally do a ton of real lagers here because we've only got so many tanks to do them properly in. But we had a little bit of downtime in January because of the lockdown and all that. So we threw this one back in there. So it's had its proper lagering time on it. So
beautiful. Awesome.
Cheers, man.
As we do, a toast. Malty backbone, yummy.
It's a forgotten kind of beer, right? Like a nice malty lager sometimes. For this time of year right now, it really works, I find.
That is all sorts of beer that I love drinking. Is, you know, the same to, like you mentioned, the pale ale. I do find that beer styles. I mean, New England IPAs are the king right now, but I think it might change soon when it comes to the more beer snobby people like me. I'm not like a hardcore beer snob where I'm like, no, this and that's it. No, I'll try every single beer. I'll give my honest opinion about things. People see me in the videos. They see if I make a weird face all of a sudden. I don't think I ever have, because almost every single beer I've tried on the show, which is a lot, have all been great beers. Right. So it's not, to me, a lager too. I mean, you're talking 6 weeks at least in the fermenter, and it's crazy. So
it's I mean, if you go, if you were to look at how people are buying beer these days, I mean, you can never go wrong. There's three styles you can never go wrong with, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. IPAs, especially Northeastern or New England style IPAs. I mean, you have to have one. It's a checkbox. Some people specialize in it more. Some people, like we do a couple of different ones that we do. Like we have a session one as well. Lagers are going to come back and be big, and they already are in the States, where you're seeing breweries that are totally focusing on just lager brewing, because palate fatigue starts to set in, and a lot of people who drink a lot of beer, you find that you can only drink so many heavily hopped IPAs. And the other one is adjunct-filled stouts. People never seem to get tired of them. They don't ever want to buy. You wouldn't go and drink 6, 12. So I got Sean from Small Pony gave me their Bone Shaker 14% IPA, or not IPA stout. That was in a 355 ml can. I'm like, oh my god, that's like three beers in one can, right? Yeah. But people do enjoy those and have them as a special treat. And so for us, what we like to do is we fill in the rest of our lineup with things like our red rye, which doesn't sell as fast as the rest of them, but it gives you a neat option to have when you come in here to have something on tap. And our English bitter, which is actually your fourth beer, we'll talk about after, but that beer, of all of our beers, has gotten more positive comments, like face-to-face, like, hey man, I really dig this beer. Yeah. But it's probably like our 8th best-selling beer, but it's the one that people, like, you as a brewer, you can tell, like, I can sit here while people are in the tap room and watch how people are drinking. You can kind of see the patterns of who's drinking what, and people will, try our clothing Gods IPA, like, yeah, this is good, but no one will ever come up to me and say, hey man, that's like, I love this beer or whatever. That English bitter, people will actually like stop me, like we have a garage in the building where we store our beer, and one of our neighbors here, he goes, I don't drink a lot of beer anymore, but that English bitter, that is top notch. I'm like, isn't that funny though? Because it doesn't sell particularly well. So we like to have a nice mix of things, so we have a little bit of something for everybody that's there. But
I mean, just up front, we'll put the bag after, but like just your can lineup, there's there's lagers, cerveza, the ale, the IPA, the bitter. You have a good mix of what people might like.
Whereas a brewery, you could easily survive on, like I said, specializing on New England style IPAs, clean lagers, and stouts. I honestly believe that you could, if you wanted to open a brewery, if you were going to use that as your backbone or your thing, I think you could totally, you could ditch all the bitters, the reds, all the other things. But then it'd be boring then, right? Like we'd be doing the same thing over and over again.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I've been to Alchemist. The only 2 beers I've had were Heady Topper and the
Focal Banger.
Focal Banger, yeah. So hopefully, we get to interview them as well at some point when it's okay to travel to the U.S. again. And Vermont is pretty much Canada, USA. So it's. I look forward to getting back to Vermont, upper New York State there, like Saratoga, even New York City. I mean, there's some spectacular breweries there. So.
Well, that's the beauty of it. There's great breweries everywhere. I've yet to go to a town or travel anywhere where I haven't been able to find at least 1 or 2 good breweries that scratch the itch. That make you feel happy that you're there.
So speaking of that, when there's a little time to take vacation and it's safer to travel, so even if it's hop on a plane or take, you don't feel like driving, so take a mega bus across Canada or whatever you want to do, or the Via Rail, a beer-focused vacation that you've never taken that I need to take.
So I need to do a pilgrimage to Dogfish Head, just because they have been, in my earlier times, just like there's everything about them. I just liked everything about what Sam Calagione does. I like all of their beers. I like they're just a fantastic brewery for me. So Dogfish Head, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, head to the brew pub there. That would be my number one, like, gotta go. Yeah. it would be a lot of fun to travel around Europe, I think, and go through the English countryside, hitting the small English pubs. I think that would be something I'd really enjoy as well. Yeah. And then as we're talking about Vermont, like I have been to Vermont before. I haven't been back there in the past few years, so I really would like to go back down there. And it's funny because one of the head brewer at Ridge Rock, Jamie, he used to work down at Harpoon, down in Vermont. And so we were talking the other day. I'm like, well, it'd be kind of nice if we went down and you were kind of our tour guide. So I'm going to keep bugging him for that and see if we can set something up like that this summer once it's good to go.
You said your neighbor isn't a big fan of craft beer, but he loves your bitter. You get the macro drinker come in. What's the gateway beer to bring them into Evergreen Craft?
Our True North Cerveza would be the one. It's deliberately simple. It's not overly sweet. It's not overly bitter. It's nice and crisp and clear and easy. That's our second best-selling beer that we have. We do a Kolsch as well, our Silver 7 Ale. We do kind of in rotation once in a while. And that one, again, I'm finding that people are more adventurous these days, and you're finding that a lot of people that are coming in that are kind of new to craft beer are starting to discover IPAs, right? While a lot of the beer nerds and beer geeks are kind of maybe, getting a little bit away from the really heavy IPAs, there's a whole new group of people that are coming that are rediscovering this. And so you're seeing a new cycle of people coming into craft. And so, while we do I'm not going to lie, like I drink simple basic lagers sometimes too, because that's just what you want. There's a beer for every occasion, and I don't care what anybody says, there's a spot for every beer that's on the market. There's a time to drink that beer. So people will throw stones at PBR, and they'll say, I don't like 12% IPAs. There's a time for both, right? You don't want 12% IPA when you're sitting on a beach when it's 30 degrees out, but you also don't want like a simple North American light lager when you want to enjoy something with food, or you want to have a little more of experience, right? Yeah. So I'm not the typical beer snob where I'll drink almost everything, and I can find a positive in almost every style and every beer that's out there.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's not big, but whenever I'm at a sporting event, being in Montreal, it's the Alouettes or it's the former Impact Club de Foot or whatever they're called now. They're the Impact to me, but or a Habs game. It's like at least the Habs they're trying with Brasseur de Montréal,
right?
But that is owned by 6 Pints Division of Molson,
right.
So it's still there. It's just at least I can try a craft beer, or
if they could just lower the prices at the games, would be better.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Canadian Tire Center is like. Is it still the Canadian Tire Center?
Yes.
Or are they okay?
Yeah.
I don't know, because I know like Rogers Center was Air Canada Center, and now it's something else. But like, I think Montreal is one of the most expensive at like $13.50 a beer.
So it's funny. So my son and I were in BC we went to Whistler, went skiing, went to Vancouver after we went to the Canucks game. And so at the end of every big vacation, I kind of take a breakdown of costs of how much we spent, right? So I was saying to my wife, here's how much we spent on airfare, here's how much we spent on hotel, cars, here's how much we spent on alcohol. She said, well, what? She goes, I know you guys drink, but why so much? And I said, well, if you look at these 4 transactions here, those are the 4 times we bought beer when we were at the Canucks game, right? $100 worth of beer for like 8 beers.
Oh my God.
So she's like, oh yeah. So, and that was just drinking there wasn't even buying craft. The craft was $3 more per can than the regular stuff. So
that's when I was actually really impressed. I was in Cleveland about 5 years ago, and their basketball arena, the Q, or it was the Q, I don't know if it still is, they had 12 craft beers in cans. And I'm like, whoa, what is this? And I've noticed that at MetLife. I went to watch the Packers play the Giants, and a bunch of they had Lone Star Texas beer. I'm like, I'm never going to find this anywhere else.
Right.
I have to try this, even if it's bad. And I do find at least some places are starting to recognize that there is that small percentage of craft beer drinker that doesn't want to drink the macro, and it's like, let's try and sell this here.
I think the challenge that we find, this is something that a lot of people don't realize, is that with the amount of beer that an arena will sell over the course of a game, we could never survive. We could never supply that volume of beer. We could send them maybe 10 kegs, and that's gone in 20 minutes, right? So, I used to kind of in my mind complain, why don't they have more craft on tap and all that? But really, there's only so many breweries that could actually support even one kiosk, let alone a whole arena. Even someone the size of Steam Whistle or Bose they don't necessarily have the capacity to feed that kind of volume into an arena like that. So that's kind of the way Well, that's how I look at it on the draft side anyways. And, okay, I understand. We can't do it, so,
Speaking of kind of those other breweries, so what are some collabs you've done with other, even just like a coffee shop for your stout or whatever? What are some collabs you've done that you'd love to give a shout out to? And then on the tail end of that, what are some collabs, like dream collabs you'd love to do? Clearly, Dogfish Head is one of them, but any other one that you'd love to collab with?
So we haven't done a ton of them because we've been under COVID for the whole time. We did one in a year and a half ago. With Calabogie, Ridge Rock, Braumeister, and Flora Hall. It was what was it? Chocolate coconut IPA, I think, is what we did. And I showed up to the collaboration. I had played hockey that morning, so by the time I got there, they'd already mashed in, cleaned out the mash tun. So I sat around and drank for the entire afternoon. But that was
collabing sounds difficult.
Yeah,
let's just okay.
But that was a big decision though, because it's like, well, at that point the restrictions were kind of lifted a bit, so we were okay to do it. But we haven't been able to do much in that way. I did one with Sean at Small Pony before he opened, back in my garage, where we did these fruited sours just in small batch, and that was pretty fun. We did one that had strawberries in it. Here's an interesting fact. So if you ferment with Brett, okay, and you have strawberries in it, and the seeds are part of the strawberry, they create a vinyl kind of ethyl acetate off flavor to it that's only detectable to something like 30% of the population. And so we were sampling it, we're like, it smells like vinyl, like it's like licking a record. And so, but apparently this is a flavor that some people actually look for in certain sours and Bretts, and apparently most people couldn't even detect that flavor. And so because it was a small batch and we were just playing around, we put it out, and some people were like, oh, this is totally fine, tastes great. And we're like, oh, but we can taste the vinyl on it though. That was good. That other one, then Dogfish Head. I mean, if I could ever do one with Dogfish Head, that'd be cool. But I do just look forward to the ability to actually do one, like any time now, because we haven't been able to. You kind of think of the optics of doing one under COVID, and you're kind of like, well, is it really the right thing to do? Probably not. But now I think we'll look towards it and talk to some of our. I was trying to get one going last year that would be called The Process, where we take a number of breweries that all take the exact same recipe and brew this exact same beer, and then highlight the fact that the process of brewing is actually what makes the beers different as opposed to the ingredients, where it's like wine, for instance, is a little bit different, where the terroir of the ingredient drives a lot of the flavor, the profile of the wine. We never got that one kicked off, but I'm thinking about seeing once we have time this summer to see if I can get that one going again.
Could you see yourselves doing maybe, like, since you do have a marijuana shop a couple of literal doors over, see yourselves doing like a hemp beer?
Well, the problem with that is that like we have an IPA called Stratosphere. It's a cooler, it makes noise. And so the hop Strata does have these mild hints of marijuana and cannabis. Okay. And so I actually put in the descriptions it does not contain marijuana or cannabis. But what happened is that all the Google links in our Shopify website banned the product because it had the word cannabis in it, right? I don't see us ever doing that because the confusion in the market and the possibility, just the hassle of running into people thinking there actually is marijuana in there, which is actually like a big no-no, like mixing marijuana and alcohol together. That'll never become a product in Ontario, especially because Ontario's like so strict. So that one probably not. We do. So I actually roast coffee on the side too. So I have done a collaboration with myself, my coffee roasting business, and we did a coffee stout that we'll be doing again as well. Yeah. But yeah, I'm just looking forward. So we haven't even had chances to sit down with, like, we used to host like a get together with all the brewers in Ottawa here, and we've done it twice, and we haven't done it for over a year because of COVID. I'm looking forward to just having everyone back in the tap room again and just hanging out and then having the chance to discuss these collabs. Yeah,
that's something I've discussed with friends. It's like we're from that first shutdown 2 years ago, we're just catching up now.
Yeah.
To what happened 2 years ago.
Yeah, and there's just still so many things to navigate right now, that being out, just getting staffing back up to levels and all that, just having the ability to actually execute on these things properly. We're still a little understaffed right now as we are. We have a new brewer starting in a couple of weeks. But we just haven't had the bandwidth to do a lot of these things properly.
I have a feeling right now it is going to come back slowly. Hopefully this sixth wave that's supposed to be coming up isn't as bad as what happened last, but that's, knock on wood. Let's try and stay positive, and stuff's going to stay open. And, I know here in Ontario, the mask mandate is more or less dropped.
Yeah.
Quebec, we still have that for now, but we'll see what that brings along. Personally, like ever since the mask came in, I'm like, I don't mind it. So it's not fun, but I don't mind it. So
I'm looking forward to our first festival. So Orleans Beer Festival is in June, and we haven't done a festival as Evergreen in Kanata. We haven't done one, period, since we've opened. And so I did a lot of them when I was in my garage, but I'm really looking forward to that. 3 days of just serving people, talking to people. Yeah. That's what I'm really looking forward to, and hopefully there'll be more festivals popping up in Ottawa. But again, it's a risk, right? Going through all that planning and only get shut down at the last minute? It's a tough risk to take as a event organizer.
Yeah, I know this is my personal thing, but like my last 2 birthdays, because they're in June and they're right before Saint Jean, Quebec, and that's when things would reopen, is specifically for that holiday in Quebec. So my birthday's right before, so. It's my own selfishness, but I'm actually going to get to celebrate my 43rd birthday with my friends coming up.
Nice.
So
nice.
It's going to be nice to actually like do stuff again. And we have done stuff, and we've gotten together, and we've hit, new breweries in Quebec, and it's kind of us small, but together as a group. And we all know like 90% of our group works from home.
Right.
It's, we are still being super precautious about what we're doing, but we're still going out and having fun.
Yep,
so,
for sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned the English bitter. What else can you tell me about it?
It's probably our most complex beer that we make, actually, the most complex grain bill that we use for it. I just like that style of beer, and if I could sell more of them and experiment with more of them, I would, but there's a balance between, commercial viability and what you want to brew. But, it's got a nice malty backbone to it. It's got a little bit more depth and complexity in the malt flavors than we get from some of our other beers. Most of our other beers are usually 2 or 3 grains at most. This one's got 6. So we did play around with this one a lot to make it the way it is. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
A toast.
Cheers.
Oh yeah. We have a friend who homebrewed an English bitter, and we're like, oh, what's it going to be? It's fantastic.
It's a great style, I mean, there was a beer by Nickelbrook called Equilibrium that back in the day, they didn't have distribution around anywhere for it. And I know Brad Campo, who owns Brewdonkey, and he knew the rep from Nickelbrook, and he actually got me a 2-4 of Equilibrium because I had it at a pub once. It was so great, and ever since then I've actually really loved that style of beer. But again, like even Nickelbrook's version of it, you don't see it in the stores anymore, probably because people don't understand how good it is and didn't buy it.
Now I know you also have a food menu. Is there kind of a food beer pairing, or it's like suggestions more or less?
It's mostly suggestions. I mean, we have a pretty simple menu. We do some paninis with usually a salad side or a soup side or something like that. Most of our beers will go fine. I mean, I'm not a big food pairing guy because I generally don't. I actually prefer not to eat when I'm drinking beers. If I want to, like, I'll have beer with food, but I don't look to pair beer with food personally. Most of our food fare is just kind of simple paninis and sandwiches and stuff like that give you something to kind of munch on while you're going through a flight of beer like that.
So like comfort food.
Yeah, it's simple. We don't have a full kitchen here, so it's all prep behind the bar. It's enough to just make sure we have our full liquor license and keep people satisfied. So we don't want anyone drinking on empty stomachs, and that's the reason why we went through the effort to go through all this, and it's worked out well for us.
Awesome. I mean, this has been a great conversation today. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to speak with us about Evergreen Craft Ales. We'll be back here for sure at some point during the summer. You mentioned the Orleans Brewing Festival, so looking forward to that too. Anything else that's kind of next outside of getting back to festivals, getting on more shelves that you can?
We're going to start cranking up our variety a little bit now. Like, it's been, through the pandemic, a lot of it's just been kind of making sure we have our, the problem with having LCBO beer store beers is that you have to keep certain beers in stock all the time so you can fulfill those orders. I think we've got that under control now. We're going to start doing some more interesting beers. We've got a release of our Cobra Chicken version 2 coming out. So that's our ode to the Canada Goose, the geese who rest in Kanata here. That one's a double dry hop, super hazy IPA. So along the lines of our quoting the Gods. We're going to be doing more barrel-aged beers. We've got Chardonnay barrel-aged Saison, the bottom 2 barrels there. We're picking up some more red wine barrels to do a similar type of barrel-aged beer in the next few weeks. We're also taking a foray into non-alcoholic beers as well.
Yeah.
There's, we did the seltzer thing last year, and I really don't like seltzers. I'm going to say this on camera. There's a market for it, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't particularly like making them, but the non-alcoholic beer is something that really interests me a lot because to make a good one, I think, is going to be very tricky because there are breweries that are dedicated to doing this. But I think that having that as an option for a lot of people, it's funny because we watched the way the pandemic drinking curve has happened, right? And when the pandemic first hit, there was a massive amount of people drinking, and I think a lot of people drank a lot during that first 2 or 3 months, right? And we saw it in our sales and just in the way our general sales activity went. And then it kind of tailed off a bit, then up a little bit down. And I think that people are now looking to be a little bit more, maybe a little responsible and go a little bit more toward quality. But sometimes you really just want to have something to just keep drinking all the time. And I think that if we can make a decent non-alcoholic beer to mix in with our lineup there, I think it'll be a pretty positive addition to the lineup. So that is something we are looking at. We're probably bringing the first one next week is the plan. And then we're going to try it out and see where those go from there.
Yeah, there is a huge movement in, I mean, you have Sober October, Dry January, and I think there's also Dry February. So a good way to support the breweries is those breweries that have NA beers. But as I said at the beginning of the pandemic is, you might not be a craft beer drinker, but there's someone in your life that's a craft beer drinker. Either get gift cards, get merch, even if you don't drink craft beer and you're walking around with your shirt, that's a great, like somebody who doesn't drink beer and they're like, where'd you get the shirt? Oh, I love it because of the design. I bought it here in Kanata. Well, you should go check these guys out since you like beer.
Yeah, I think that extends even more to even just local producers in general, even beyond just brewers. Like for instance, we've seen our material costs, ingredient costs go up about 25% since November, right? And so there's a new maltster out in Mississippi Mill. It's called M3 Malts. And we'd spoken to them before, and the pricing just didn't make a whole lot. It was a big gap to make up at that point. But once the price increases happened here, that gap wasn't very big anymore. So we've switched all of our base malt to local malt now. Now we will continue to do that almost regardless of what the prices are, because for him, if more breweries in Ottawa switch to using him, his scale, his business grows, his scale gets better, his costs come down, et cetera, and we're putting our money back into somebody who's local around here as well. And so I do believe that as far restaurants, bakeries, coffee roasters, farmers, all that kind of stuff, we do need to look more inward into our own local markets to see butchers. There's a around the block butcher shop, local butcher as well in Ottawa. These are the kind of businesses that are providing jobs in the community, and also the money stays in the community as well. And I know it's kind of cliche talking about this all the time, but there's so many different industries that have local representation within cities that while they may be a touch more expensive, if they get the support that they need, the pricing will go down because it's all just scale, right? So.
Yeah, it's I'm starting to see hop farms pop up all over Canada too, and that was in my mind when I started drinking craft beer 10, 15 years ago. I had no idea. I just knew it was the 4 main, classic ingredients and then whatever, how they could do it. And now it's like there's 2 hop farms in Quebec. I think there's one not far from here in the.
Those ones the hop farm one's a tough one because a lot of the big hops like Mosaic and Citra, they're all proprietary hops. So they can't grow them here. So it depends. Like there's some beers you can make with local and some that you can't. Yeah. And then for us, unfortunately, a lot of our beers, when we first formulated them, they're all based on the traditional, the Amarillos, the Simcoes, and you can't get them, right? That's it. So unfortunately for hop farm, I know a couple of them have gone out of business because of that. Like there's just not enough demand for Cascade and Chinook for a lot of those beers. So
we'll see. It's quite the adventure for growing hops from what I've seen. There's a home brewer we hang out with, and he grows some hops in his backyard, but he still has to get the pelletized forms from Yakima Chief and all that stuff. So it's.
I've got hop vines all over my house, all over my yard, and the problem with using those in the beers, they're a pain in the ass to harvest. Your arms are all scratched after, but the yield is remarkably low from ones that go by, and you're like, how do they get all these hops? There's so many of them, but it's But for us, like, we use all Escarpment Labs yeast, if they're in Southern Ontario. Our malts are all, our base malts are all, there's some malts you can only just get, like you can't, they don't have local crystal malts yet and stuff like that. But
it's the same thing with oats, there's only some malts you can get in Canada, some oats you have to get from America, so.
You aren't drinking locally made orange juice, that's for sure.
No,
right?
that's for sure. Awesome. Thanks very much for coming,
Anytime,
for letting
man.
us come out and speak with you today. I've honestly got no other questions. It's been a fantastic talk. Let my audience know where they can find you.
So we're in Kanata by the Canadian Tire Centre out here in Ottawa, 767 Silver 7 Road in Kanata. If you're ever going to Costco, Home Depot, or pre-game for a Senators game, you can stop by here as well. And evergreencraftales.com. My Facebook account got hacked this morning, so I think that our Instagram and Facebook stuff is okay right now. If there's anything weird on there, it's not because we posted it. I'll be tackling that as soon as I get off the interview.
Amazing. So all that's going to be in the show notes. Definitely click on the links to check these guys out. As for us, allbeerinside.com is the website. At All Beer Inside on all social media. When you have a moment, please subscribe and make comments. That always helps the show. And as I say at the end of all episodes, drink craft, not crap.